Splendid. Well, hello. It's a real pleasure to talk to you today about the Abermagwr Roman villa in Ceredigion, in particular, what it's told us about rarity and innovation at this most unusual site in mid Wales. I'm talking on behalf of my colleague and co-director of the excavations at Abermagwr, Dr. Geoffrey Davies. And we'll be looking at some of the revelations that this modest villa building gave us about the situation in mid and west Wales during the Roman period. Now we can see from this map that Abermagwr Villa lies on the Ystwyth Valley in the central part or central northern part of Ceredigion on the west coast of Wales. And this map of Roman Ceredigion shows you there's not an awful lot of Roman archaeology here, aside from the main north-south Roman road and the principal Roman forts established every 15 or 20 miles or so between the AD 70s and their abandonment around AD 130. So this Roman villa, which appeared in the landscape about AD 230, probably occupied to the 330s or 340s AD, it's still the only known Roman villa from Ceredigion and one of the very few that we have from mid and west Wales. And this is a sort of reconstruction of what we think the villa looked like in its heyday. Abermagwr Roman villa was discovered from the air in 2006 and confirmed tentatively through geophysics in 2009. And this was such a novelty for mid Wales, such an unusual discovery. It prompted excavations, and these were largely grant funded by the Cambrian Archaeological Association and a few other grant bodies to whom we're very grateful. So we had 3 seasons of work in 2010, 2011, and 2015. The building is a modest villa. It has clay floors, no evidence for tessellated floors or mosaics through our work. And yet, what an innovation this building was in the regional landscape. This part of Ceredigion in West Wales was previously thought to be a military zone in Roman Wales and Roman Britain. So too unsafe really to invest long-term in a villa building for a wealthy landowner to settle and build their farm, their statement of Romanitas, if you like. So the Abermagwr discovery flips a lot of what we understood about Roman mid Wales on its head. And we're still learning more about these sites every day. Let's look at the position of Abermagwr Roman villa in Roman Britain and Roman Wales. Abermagwr sits way out west in West Wales, similar to some of the very remote villas we have from Cornwall and the north of England. If we found a villa like Abermagwr on the south of England in the Cotswolds region, for example, it wouldn't occasion much surprise. However, it's still a novelty and still hugely interesting out in West Wales here. And a map of Roman villas that Jeff and I put together for our 2018 article about Abermagwr in ArchCam shows just how isolated Abermagwr still is. Here it is, number 1 in mid Wales. We have a Roman building at Tremadog in North Wales, which may either be a villa or an administrative building of some sort. We have a pocket of villas down in Pembrokeshire. Number 2, discovered through Mike Parker Pearson's work in the Preselles only quite recently through geophysics at Caerau, and a pocket of villas emerging around the sort of the area of influence of Diva, Roman Chester, up in northeast Wales. But other than that, mid Wales is still a zone for discovery, and we can still expect some more discoveries in the future to fill in this map somewhat. So as I mentioned, the villa came up in 2006 following drought aerial survey. We'd known about an enclosure site there for some years before, but never thought it could be a villa. We had the opportunity for geophysics in 2009, along with a television program we were making with the Royal Commission, which confirmed a winged building with a corridor at the front of it as well. Now in South Wales or the Cotswolds, southwest England, we could be sure this was a villa on the basis of geophysics alone, and it could even be scheduled on the basis of geophysics. But there was still no complete certainty that this was a Roman building and not perhaps a more later building of unusual type. So this prompted excavations in 2010 to test what we had. In 2010, we began trial excavations over the domus of the building, the house there, to sample the building character, recover some dates, and also the rear ditches, an inconclusive trench there. 2011, we returned to widen the trench over the domus to understand more about its chronology and the effects of a fire, which appears to have devastated the house later in its history. In 2011, we also excavated a trench D here and tested an unfinished heated room in trench E in the building. And in 2015, we returned to answer some questions about what was happening in the courtyard to the west of the villa. Why this big open space? And we found actually it was just a great big farmyard. But we did get some useful information on the ditches again from trench G in the west. So 3 seasons of excavation, but a lot more on site yet to excavate and discover. A fascinating building. I won't talk in detail about the excavations, there isn't time today. But because of the very light agricultural regime in Ceredigion, the remains sit about 20 centimeters below the surface. And yet we have fascinating remains here. We have, from its later phases, a half made of recovered roof slates, presumably reoccupation of the building in late Roman or post-Roman times after the collapse of the roof. We have evidence of burning, a catastrophic fire which brought down the roof of the villa. There's the burning on the clay floor of the kitchen. We have the sort of kitchen on principal room here, the rear room 6, the corridor and the graveled courtyard outside. The building robbed to its foundations as well. And from a fire near the later bread oven, we have the recovery of a Roman black burnish ware vessel, dropped into a fireplace, dropped and burnt in situ, but never recovered. So this pot was never picked up once it had been dropped into a fire. And we have evidence throughout the villa of people leaving in rather a hurry. So it does seem that a large part of the villa, though perhaps not the eastern part, was destroyed during this catastrophic fire. We also have a good understanding of the chronology of the villa. One of the earliest coins is of Severus Alexander from the early to middle part of the 3rd century AD, and then a good coin sequence in the early part of the 4th century AD, showing sort of the likely sort of occupation of the villa for about a century between AD 230 and AD 330-40. And this concurs with the work by Dr. Peter Webster on the pottery chronology from the villa as well. We're here today to talk about what the Abermagwr villa taught us about innovation in the Roman landscape of mid-Wales. So, not just digging another Roman villa. This was never Jeff and I's intention. It was to understand what on earth the villa was doing there in the landscape of hill forts and Romano-British farmsteads, and what it did and how it transformed the local landscape. Now, this is the reconstruction of the villa I did in 2018. It shows quite a modest building for its time, but still a substantial stone building for its period. We know that the walls of the villa were local sandstone sourced from about 5 kilometers to the east near Llanilla. We have an historic wall at Castle Hill Estate built out of the same sandstone. So that gives us an impression of what the villa walls look like. But it's very likely that this very well-cut stone, some of it military cut, that we recovered principally from one of the trenches to the east of the building here, was recovered from the dismantled bathhouse of the nearby Roman fort. Trowscoid Roman fort, about 1.5 kilometers away. The bathhouse has never been located at Trowscoid Roman fort, and it's Jeff's thoughts that it was dismantled and brought here and actually provided a lot of the stone for the villa use. The farmyard around, or the yard around the villa, seems to have been simply a farmyard. We've got no good evidence for more complicated buildings standing in the villa area here, or precursors of the villa. The excavations taught us a lot about the architecture and engineering of the Roman villa. This didn't just arrive in the landscape. This was an architect-designed building built with real purpose. And just look at the foundations, the footings that we have. The building is largely robbed down to its footings, but these were an enormous construction effort in themselves. These nearly meter-deep foundation trenches filled with cobbles from the nearby River Ystwyth. We estimate around 117 tons of material was brought in to make the footings alone. So we already have a huge civil engineering effort, a huge investment in the building site before the first wall stone goes into place. So remarkable deep footings of this building. The roofing as well was quite remarkable. Now, anytime a Roman villa is excavated, we see it on the news, sometimes new discoveries as well, we have roof slates, either slates or stone roof tiles made from the local stone. And these are normally hexagonal or pentagonal. And we often get pictures of these being arranged together to form the roofing of the villa. But there's a lot more to it than that. Now, we discovered quite a few roof slates in our early excavations at Abermagwr in 2010 and 2011. Many of the pentagonal, smaller Pez-size roof slates, very far fewer of the palimpes, the larger hexagonal roof slates. And here we can see Dave Brown holding one that he discovered in 2015, one of the finest from the site, that had looked like it had been placed in the outer enclosure ditches as a step across a ditch, possibly during the robbing of the villa, when all the material was being removed somewhere else. So we were happy to have the complete Roman slates on site, but it wasn't until we called in an expert, Bill Jones, a slate expert from Blaen y Ffestiniog, that we learned so much more about the technology this roof represented. Bill Jones told us that you don't make a roof out of just these complete pentagonal or hexagonal slates. You need a lot more slates to make up the full roof. We showed him the complete ones and he said, well, I want to see everything you have. And we brought out all those scrappy, what we thought were broken bits of slate to find out actually these were all the essential parts of a complete slate roof. Here we can see a basic reconstruction of part of the roof, including these very rare ridge slates that we have at the top. We thought these were the broken tips of pentagonal slates, but actually these are an essential part of the roof, as are the flat-edged ones that form the base of the roof. Bill's calculations that we published are invaluable. Nearly 6,600 slates required for the main villa roof, nearly 2,500 for the projecting wings alone. The whole roof weighing about 18 to 23 tons. And critically as well, that you can't mix large and small slates on the same roof. So it may be the larger slates, the smaller number we use for the wings, and the smaller slates here, the pentagonal slates, we use for the main villa roof. And it's Bill's work that told us so much more about how a slate roof is comprised. The complete slates in the middle, but these more unusual, oddly shaped slates for the edges of the roof, slithers of slate down here as well for the edges, these very well preserved ridge slates retaining their original nail. We also found imbrique on site, Roman military imbrique that we assume were forming the actual ridge of the roof itself. And even these decorated slate fragments with central nail holes, which may well have been for a decorative finish to the roof over the main front door of the villa. So we learned a lot about roofing, but also we learned something very special about these slates, which Bill spotted from his analysis. And that's the survival of slatus marks on these Abermagwr slates. Now, these very fine lines that an experienced slater will make to shape out and size out the slates before they are worked and shaped, these don't survive on the very hard Cambrian slates of North Wales, where we find Roman slates, and nor do they seemingly survive on the softer sandstones that we have for Roman slates down at Llantwit Major, for example, or in the Cotswolds. It's this particular shale slate in mid Wales that's preserved these very fine marks over sort of 1700 years. And these show the existence of an experienced slater on site, shaping these slates and making these decisions. And these are a critical survival from Abermagwr. And one particularly critical mark that Bill identified on the slates was the measuring mark, to mark where the slate where the nail is put through the slate. And this is made with a prick messier, a measuring stick. And this is a component of the recent historic slate industry in North Wales. So this is hooked on the base of the slate, and a nail extends to scratch a line in the same place on every slate, so the roofer knows where to bang the nail through. And here is the Roman mark here, marked in the very same way as was used in the slate industry even to the early 1960s as well. So these closer study, an expert study of the roofing slates from the villa, has shown us the incredible innovation this building brought with it not only architects arriving on site, but slaters as well, who could source the correct lithology and the nearby hills to split slates, bring them to site, shape them, and then roofers to put them on the roof of the villa. So some real things we've learned from the work here. Looking also at rarity from this villa. Now, the villa produced a lot of very standard domestic finds from the Roman sphere that we'd expect from mid-Wales. We had a few nice finds as well, such as this bronze furniture stud from the rear room. And it's indeed the rear room 6 that we produced most of the fine finds from the site, the beads, a fragment of shell bracelet, and also fragments of cut glass. These were recovered in 2011 from the corner of the room, and they were from a part of the room that had been heavily disturbed by stone robbers. So when we popped them out of the ground, we thought that this very ornate cut glass must be Roman, but then doubt crept in, and we thought maybe it's an historic Victorian glass potentially. We sent all our glass away to a Roman specialist, Professor Jenny Price, to look at them, and sent this cut glass to, not really hoping for very much. It looked far too good to be Roman to our eyes. The late Professor Jennifer Price came back to us with a rather an urgent message that not only was this cut glass Roman, but it was a very special find for Roman Wales and even Roman Britain. This is the Abermagwr glass cup or bowl. This is about the size of a modern wine glass. It was made on the Rhineland in Germany. A thicker glass blank would be made, and then the designs would be cut in with gem cutter's tools. And Jenny Price concluded that the quality is vastly superior to any other of the glass found at the villa, and indeed for most of the Roman tableware in Wales. So this is one of the finest late Roman pieces of glassware from Roman Wales. The design scheme isn't exactly matched anywhere from Roman Britain, although we have fragments of the design scheme found on other vessels from Roman Britain. And we can see how rare cut glass is in the Roman world. If you go to the British Museum, you have 2 cabinets of Roman glass, but only 1 cut glass vessel from Cambridgeshire, this little beaker here, surviving. So Roman cut glass is still very rare. And what it's doing here at Abermagwr Villa, broken in the rear room, we can only imagine. But as Geoffrey Davies said, it echoes the social aspirations of the owners of Abermagwr Villa. This is a very special find indeed, to be brought out at the best ceremonies and the best family circumstances. Abermagwr cut glass was so special that it made the coveted first sight frontispiece and pages in British Archaeology magazine back in 2019. So we showed the wonders of this small vessel to the wider world. Mike Pitts, the editor, was very happy to have it there. But we had the cut glass in storage at Ceredigion Museum, and there was no clear way of how we were going to present these pieces of broken glass to the public to show how they originally looked. Now, last spring, 2020, before the lockdown, lucky enough to go to London and see the new Bloomberg display of the Temple of Mithras in the City of London. And they've got this fantastic artifact wall with all the artifacts discovered from the Mithraeum beautifully displayed here, and you have iPads to look at the details of these. And I spotted that there was one cut glass vessel, very similar to ours, earlier than ours, but beautifully displayed with bent wire work. And through some inquiries, we found the exhibition designer who made this. And then last year, we helped the Ceredigion Museum apply for funding to the Association of Roman Archaeology for sufficient funds to get that acclaimed exhibition designer to come to Aberystwyth and actually work personally on a new display mount for the Abermagwr cut glass. And we hope this will all go ahead after lockdown, but this is very exciting. So we will have a display of the Abermagwr glass vessel in Aberystwyth to the same quality and standard of this incredible world-renowned display in London. So that's really very special. And we've got to be very grateful to the Association of Roman Archaeology for making that award of grant funds as well. And the Ceredigion Museum are going to make something of this experience when the person is able to come up and do the design. So an exciting end for this most unusual vessel from Abermagwr. I'm happy to say that the Roman Villa excavations by Jeff and myself were written up and published in Archaeologia Cambrensis in 2018. From the outset, from 2010, early in the project, we mounted an exhibition of finds in Ceredigion Museum. And there's Ceredigion's earliest slated roof on display, and there's very rare ridge tiles as well. You can go and visit that when Ceredigion Museum opens again. All the finds are now archived in the museum stores. And while we couldn't save the boxes and boxes of heavy shale slates from the villa, which have been returned to site, we've retained the slate corpus of those most important marked slates, those with the slater's marks. Those have all been retained in the museum's collections for future study. So I do urge you to go and see that. And soon, hopefully, the Roman cut glass vessel will be on display. So a modest mid-Wales villa, still the only Roman villa we have in Ceredigion, and still one of the only Roman villas we have from mid-Wales. But there must be more out there. Where are they? We've got to keep looking for them. But I hope this short talk has given you some insight into the innovation we have at Abermagwr Villa and the rarity of some of those finds we've recovered. Many thanks indeed. Diolch yn fawr.